Good morning. Today is Monday, October 17th, 2022. This is the Urban Hope Refuge Morning Devotions. We're continuing our reading today from the 2022 Daily Bible Reading Guide published by the American Bible Society. For the month of October, we are reading under the theme God's renewing word of peace and justice. Yes, today is Monday, and Minister Campbell, who normally reads for us on Monday, is in the process of leaving for the United Kingdom for the International Congress in the UK. We bid him Godspeed and traveling mercies, and he will be back to morning devotions. Guess when? October 31st. Today, we're reading Leviticus chapter 25, verses 1 through 28. It is quite a lengthy reading because we're picking up yesterday's reading and today for the full context of the scripture as it is related to our theme, God's renewing word of peace and justice. Verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when you come into the land which I am giving you, then the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. For 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in its crops. Sabbath of rest for the land, a Sabbath to the Lord. You shall not sow seed in your field, nor prune your vineyard. Whatever reseeds itself uncultivated in your harvest, you shall not reap, nor shall you gather the grapes from your uncultivated vine. It shall be a year of sabbatical rest of the land, and all of you shall have food for whatever the untilled land produces during its Sabbath year. Yourself and your male and female servants, your hired servant, and the foreigners who reside among you, even your domestic animals and the wild animals that are in your land shall have all its crops to eat. Sub-theme, the year of Jubilee. Verse 8. You are also to count off 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself. 7 times 7 years, so that you have the time of the 7 Sabbaths of your years, namely 49 years. Then you shall sound the ram's horn everywhere on the 10th day of the 7th month, which is almost October. On that day of atonement, you shall sound the trumpet throughout the land. And you shall consecrate the 15th year and proclaim, verse 10, and you shall consecrate the 50th year and proclaim freedom for slaves throughout the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee, your year of remission for you, and each of you shall return to his own ancestral property that was sold to another because of poverty, and each shall return to his family from whom he was separated by bondage. The 50th year shall be a year of jubilee for you. You shall not sow seed, nor reap what rescinds itself, nor gather the grapes of the uncultivated vines. For it is the jubilee. It shall be holy to you. You shall eat its crops out of the fields. In this year of jubilee, each of you shall return to his own ancestral property. If you sell anything to your friend or buy from your friend, you shall not wrong one another. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, you shall buy from your friend, and he is to sell to you according to the number of years of crops which may be harvested before you must restore the property to him. If the years until the next Jubilee are many, you shall increase the price, but if the years remaining are few, you shall reduce the price because it is the number of crops he is selling to you. You shall not wrong one another, but you shall fear your God with profound reverence, for I am the Lord your God. Therefore, you shall carry out my statutes and keep my ordinances to do them, so that you may live securely on the land. Then the land will yield its produce, so that you can eat your fill and live securely on it. And if you say, what are we going to eat in the 7th year if we do not sow seed or gather in our crops? Then this is my answer. I will order my special blessing for you in the 6th year, so that it will produce sufficient crops for 3 years. When you are sowing the 8th year, you can still eat old things from the crop, eating the old until the 9th year when its crop comes in. Something, the law of redemption, verse 23. The land should not be sold permanently, for the land is mine. You are only foreigners and temporary residents with me. So, in all the country that you possess, you are to provide for the redemption of the land in the year of Jubilee. If a fellow countryman of yours becomes so poor he has to sell some of his property, then his nearest relative is to come and buy back or redeem what his relative has sold. Or in case a man has no relative to redeem his property, but he has become more prosperous and has enough to buy it back, then he shall calculate the year since its sale and refund the balance to the man whom he sold it, and so return his ancestral property. But if he is unable to redeem it, then what he has sold shall remain in the hands of the purchaser until the year of Jubilee. But at the year of Jubilee, it shall revert, and he may return his property. If a man sells a house in a walled city, then his right of redemption remains valid for a full year after his sale. His right redemption lasts a full year, but if it is not redeemed for him within a full year, then the house that is in the walled city passes permanently and irrevocably to the purchaser throughout his generations. It does not revert back in the year of Jubilee. The houses of the villages that have no surrounding walls, however, shall be considered as open fields. They may be redeemed and revert in the year of Jubilee. As for the cities of the Levites have a permanent right of redemption for the houses in the city they possess. Therefore, what is purchased from the Levites may be redeemed by a Levite, and the house that was sold in the city they possess reverts in the year of Jubilee. For the houses in the Levite cities are their ancestral property among the Israelites, but the pasture lands of their cities may not be sold, for that is their permanent possession. Sub-theme: a poor countryman. Verse 35. Now, if your fellow countryman becomes poor and his hand falters with you, that is, he has trouble repaying you for something, then you ought to help and sustain him with courtesy and consideration, like a stranger or a temporary resident without property, so that he may live among you. Do not charge him unserious interest, but fear your God with profound reverence, so your countrymen may continue to live among you. You shall not give him your money at interest, nor your food at profit. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan and to be your God. Whew. This concludes our reading for today of Leviticus chapter 25, verses 1 through 38. And let me say to you very quickly that all of this that God said to the Israelites is because every time they had a new king, they would revert back to the worship of idol gods and doing the things that were against what God had called them to do. So God set up a process that they would have a year of Jubilee. And during the year of Jubilee, it is all rest and concentration on their relationship with God. Let me end with this. Our founding apostle, The late Bishop Robert Clarence Lawson wrote a song that says, "This is the year of Jubilee." And in that song, he talks about all of the good things that God has done for us. And he said, "I do believe that this is the year of Jubilee." Listen, saints, every day for those who are believers and those who walk with the Lord, every day can be a day of Jubilee where we respect one another, we love one another, and we care for each other. Listen, that's all I can say today, except to pray your way through the day, walk with the King, and be a blessing, and have a year and a day of Jubilee.